What do you think it takes to make a good leader? Ponder that while I go through some of the things the Toastmaster thinks it takes. As a leader, you are measured, recognized, and awarded not by the things that you do, but by the things that your team does. And that's very, very important to remember, because often leaders, they'll take credit for what their team does for them, but it's your team that builds you up and is producing that work. So if we look at some of the great leaders of our time and look at some of the universal principles that they follow, what do? They provide clear direction. They give clear direction to their team of what their expectations are. They foster collaboration. They're not going into a situation and saying, you're doing this piece and you need to do it better, and you're doing that piece for you to do better. It's everybody working together to find a solution. And they motivate their team to do better. And part of that is through this collaboration and setting up a good experience for everybody that they can move forward. And so the coaching part of this is, what do you do as a coach? Because if you lead as a coach, you're going to get a better team, a more productive team. They'll be more motivated. They'll have more buy-in for what you want them to do. So what are they supposed to do? You need to tell them what they're supposed to do. You need to have a plan for your team so they know where they're going. Why are they supposed to do it? It's very important to have for them to buy into why they're doing it. Part of that is this collaborative exercise that you can do where they're part of that why. And if they're coming together and figuring out what that why is, it helps. It helps them to buy into it and to own it. How are they supposed to do it? This is a roadmap. You provide a roadmap for how they're going to get there. It's a little different from your plan. The plan tells you what you're supposed to do on a higher level. But your roadmap is how, and then how well are they expected to do it. This is performance measures. When you get to this point, you know you've succeeded and you know you've done what you were supposed to do. Now how about you guys? Do you have anything to add in the fundamentals of coaching? What would you add to this? Any ideas? Yes, Taddy?
The Army says be, no, do, so you have to be able to do whatever you're asking them to do.
Right.
I mean, you have to be a knowledge
For people to
reservoir
bring for people, and so lead by example, coach by example. So when you're doing that exercise and you're coaching, you're leading by coaching, then people are seeing that, they see how you do it. If your example of leadership is just parsing it out and telling everybody what they have to do and when they have to do it by, and just really being rigid about that, that's the example that they see. And that's the culture that tends to be developed. So also, this is how well is the last fundamental of this. And so there's some responsibilities that come with this. What are a coach's responsibilities? They need to be able to provide direction and feedback to their team. And part of that is setting high but achievable expectations. So you want to set expectations. You want people to reach for their goals. If you give them something too simple to do, they'll lose interest. And so you want to be able to have something that's always a little bit of a stretch. And I actually like to have two types. I like to have those things that are a little bit of a stretch and also things that are a big stretch, because then people aren't always going to be really able to do that. You can't sustain a high goal, always working towards a really high goal. So you need to have some in between where you're working a little bit, where you have something you can achieve and then something that's a little bit more of a stretch. And guiding your team members. And in terms of guiding your team members, you want to provide them with a lot of support in that way. But I also think that's a lot of one-on-one, but it's also coming from them. Because when you're leading as a coach, you really are putting your team forward and encouraging them and supporting them to be able to reach their goals. Offering support and giving advice, and that's again being that reservoir that Patty talked about, being a reservoir of being able to do what it is that you're asking them to do. I don't know that that's not always a requirement. There's a lot of people that on my team I don't actually know how to do what they do. So I don't know that that's necessarily, because you want to bring together a broad team. I want people to come from different disciplines. I have engineers that are working for me. I have a lot of other different people that I don't know what they're doing. I have soils engineers and structural engineers and research scientists that are specialists in different areas. But finding that common language and bringing them together provides that support. And then for resources, you can put them in contact with what that resource would be. So that's your advice. And then providing feedback. Now that comes back to your performance measures. If you've identified early on what your expectations are, then you can sit down and you can look at what they've accomplished, you can see whether or not they're meeting those expectations, and then provide feedback. And encouragement. Be sure to tell your team members exactly how scrumptious they are on every occasion that you can. And so there's 5 steps to effective coaching, and this involves a lot of praise and encouraging, but it also has a lot to do with setting appropriate expectations, making those expectations clear, making that plan clear. So here, the first one is comparing performance with expectations. So you have performance measures that give you that plan of what's happening, and then you have the expectations that you set. It gives you a very clear roadmap as to whether or not your team is meeting that. And it can be done on an individual basis or a team basis. Again, meeting with them. Don't wait until it's 6 months, a year later. Meet with them on a regular basis, because a lot of what you're doing is you're listening to what they're saying. You're listening to what their needs are. What roadblocks do you need to eliminate? I think one of the most important functions of a leader is to remove roadblocks for their team so that they can do what they need to do. Ask for acknowledgement, and that's part of making sure you get feedback, that they're understanding what you're saying and what you're asking for them. And then work towards a solution. There will be always issues that come up in your team. And it could be an issue with an individual, it could be an issue with the team as a whole. If you feel like things are starting to go sideways, it's your responsibility to dive in there right away and do it in a non-threatening way. Do it in a team and collaborative environment to bring those people together and figure out a solution, because you can tell when there's some antagonism going on. You can tell when productivity is dropping or morale is dropping. And again, it's your responsibility to make sure that that doesn't happen, because you're providing that you need to open those roadblocks up. And then following up afterwards. Is that working? Is it working? If it's not working, you need to try something else, because you're not always going to get it right each time. And this is, there's some tips from Toastmasters about how to go through this process of discussing this. And I think these are really important, this talking with them and not down to them. I think we've all experienced a situation in our life where we've been talked down to. I think we experience it a lot, actually. People will often, I think, when you hear about people who are unhappy with their jobs or frustrated, it's often because they have a leader that is talking down to them. And probably to make themselves feel better, I don't know. But that, you need to be able to sit down and acknowledge what's happening in the team or in the person that you're working with, and listen to what they need, because you really want them to be functioning at the highest level. You want them to be, it's not just about making them happy, it's about making sure that they can do the job that you need them to do, that they have the skills, that they have the time, that they have all of those collaborative pieces that have to go together to make it work. This is a big one. Admit when you've made a mistake. People do not admit when they make mistakes. Not enough. You have to admit when you make a mistake, because you can't learn from it. You need to learn from that. You need to learn and be able to grow. We all make mistakes. We all make them somebody on the news just came to mind, I'm gonna move on from that one. At least you did make them, at least you did admit to it. And then keep it simple, keep your directions clear and simple. And listen, this is one of the key things of a leader. When you're in a leadership position, your role is not to stand and talk all the time, as I am now. Your role is to listen to what's happening in your team or the person that you want to interact with, so that you understand where they're coming from and what they need in order to do their job more successfully. Keep it short, keep it specific. What more do I need to say? And be sincere. So many times people are unsure about their skill level or where they're at or what they're doing, that they hide behind a facade of being smarter or braver or whatever. And you don't need to do that. You just need to be sincere about what you're looking for and what you expect. It's a lot more productive. And be timely. Be on time. But this doesn't mean be on time. What this means is don't wait to provide that feedback. Provide it as soon as it is appropriate. And so what are some of the benefits of coaching? You have high morale, you have empowerment, you have a lot more development of your team members. They really, because people are, when they're empowered, they're more aware of what they do and they don't know, and they can ask better, they can ask for development a lot easier. So I think one of the most important things about this is that you have a responsibility as a leader to be a coach, to really empower the team that you have. It's not about you. It's not about the leader. You are in service, always, in service to your team. And that is probably one of the most critical things of being a good leader. Madam Toastmaster.
Keep Monique here for just 1 second. Monique, this marks the completion of your Advanced Leader Bronze. And that means she gets the, drum roll please, the cherry flavored. I suspect that she enjoys Otter Pops a lot. Wouldn't you think, Otter?
Oh.
So with others.
Thank you.
What a scrumptious meeting this is. Let's get that word out of there. Deal with it. Monique was dealing with a subject that some of you who are new may not know about and how Toastmasters work. Our Toastmaster gave a bit of an introduction. I'd like to elaborate on that a little bit more. There are some, quote, canned speeches that Toastmasters puts together. In this case, on how to be a good leader. There's one on evaluation. There are other subjects which we have to give as we move along in our advanced Toastmasters role, in this case for Advanced Leader Bronze, to get credit. They're under the leadership series. And that was the point of Monique choosing this today. Now, all of us who've done these speeches have found them to a greater or lesser degree boring, a little bit like you were saying, pedestrian, I think was the wonderful word that Jack used. Certainly not scrumptious. And yet, I thought you made what could have been a kind of, yeah, we all know about coaching, yeah, we know about leadership, speech, into something that was very effective. And I want to say why I think you did that. First of all, you had a very nice start with a question. You made a very good use of the screen and stood over to the side so that we could read it. And you, although sometimes it did repeat what was on the screen, it was not overly done. The screen words were very simple, they weren't cluttered, all very well done. I liked a couple of your points that you added. Small stretch, big stretch was a nice visual image for me to picture you as a leadership person, as a coach. I thought you asked good questions. I think you could have asked more questions, actually, and got us more involved. You had very good humor. As I've watched you and been part of your experience here at Toastmasters, you have become much more comfortable here. You're full of good humor. And I loved your conclusion that this is not about you as a leader, even though you are the president of the club. So it's a great chance for you to demonstrate this, but it's getting the group involved and helping them to do so. A couple of suggestions. Don't say, "you guys." Then I would like to have seen you tie this canned speech into our club a little bit better. What does this coaching role have to do to, if you're the president, to work with the VPE, the VPM, the other officers to help them with their role? What can we all do, particularly after we're here for a little while, to be better mentors of people who are newer to the club? And that, I think, would have made this much more interesting and more effective as a Toastmasters coaching speech, rather than just a generic speech. Enjoyed it very much, Madam Toastmaster. You're back on, and my favorite candy is a Java chip Frappuccino from Starbucks.
Yay.